Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to take a look at the latest gameplay of Broken Arrow, as I just uploaded a video on YouTube a little while back. First we're going to watch the full almost 4-minute video, and after that I'd like to take some parts of the footage and discuss those a little bit more in depth. But before we get into the gameplay, if you want to check out Broken Arrow Steam store, you can find that as well as my Broken Arrow playlist linked below in the description. Let's take a look at it. Alright, now we've taken a look at the raw footage. I really want to highlight a few things that popped into my mind after seeing this footage and give you a little bit more background information. Now, I am allowed to tell you I was in some of the very super early testing of Broken Arrow. So yes, I have actually been able to play the game. No, I'm not allowed to talk about it or showcase any of the gameplay, but what I can say, or what I will say, is that the game almost reminds me of World in Conflict. It feels very similar. The gameplay footage that we have seen publicly so far is very reminding of that as well. Now, this amphibious attack I don't think is representative of just a regular PvP match. Now, whether this is a special game mode against the AI, or it's a PvP game mode where one side attacks and one side defends, again, much like one of the World in Conflict game modes, leaves to be, I guess, seen. I do like the idea of having a amphibious-based assault with offshore artillery or rockets, helicopters, transports. We have AAVs and LAVs. I do think that's a super cool part of games. I love doing that in Wargame Red Dragon during some of the campaign battles. For example, in the Climb Mount Narodnaya campaign, where you can do some amphibious invasions. There's a lot of cool moments in games where you get to control a large amphibious invasion force, and to see that here in Broken Arrow is actually really exciting. Then I really feel like I have to talk about this camera perspective Russian Hind helicopter. This is such a cool and unique feature that I'm hoping this is not something that they've just done for the cinematic video, but it's actually angles we can get to in game without any mods or add-ons. It looks like the hovercraft made it to the beach and unloaded LAVs as well as US Marines, and then we get this shot of what I think is the inside of a US Cobra attack helicopter. And again, I want to believe that this is really something we can do in the game. It would be such a unique feature for an RTS to just allow you to quickly, just even if it's purely visual. I'm not expecting us to allow like Call to Arms or Gates of Hell style control, or even Company of Heroes style control, where there are some, I think Tales of Valor allowed you some direct control of units, but just this camera perspective, even if there's like a replay system and you could only do it during the replays, would still add so much flavor that I get a little giddy just thinking about it. This next shot of what I'm pretty sure are HIMARS artillery, a lot more famous now than they were a couple of months ago, are actually shown here, and I'm not really too interested in the HIMARS themselves, though I guess the real world sort of parallel could be interesting. It's the UAV that we get a quick, very quick shot of, as well as the size and scale of the map when this HIMARS actually fires. Now, one thing World in Conflict, relatively known for at the time, I think, were the relatively big map sizes. Then Wargame Red Dragon has some huge maps, and it looks like Broken Arrow is going to also include huge maps. You can just see the pure scale of these rockets flying what must be in-game absolute kilometers across an airfield, across a huge city, hitting this Russian column. So in this gameplay video, they show a Blackhawk, a Harrier, and an Abrams all in the sort of deck creation area, where they quickly showcase some of the different things you can put on or take off these vehicles. So in the case of the Blackhawk, you can see they add 50 caliber machine guns, they add rocket pods, hell, they even add anti-tank guided missiles. For the Harrier, you can see it go through different loadouts, which means that, for example, if you take Warno or Wargame and you have a Harrier, and the Harrier can have rocket pods, the Harrier can have bombs. In those games, though, they are going to each be a different unit. So you have one bomb Harrier, one rocket Harrier, a napalm Harrier, an anti-tank guided missile Harrier. Here, you're going to have just one Harrier. One unit can be modified in a lot of ways. So the Harrier, we can see, gets rocket pods, it gets bombs, and this actually will determine the cost of said unit. So obviously a Harrier without any loadout, probably going to be very cheap. A Harrier with bombs, going to be a lot more expensive, and a Harrier with bombs and rockets and potentially other weaponry is going to be even more expensive. So you want to try to figure out what a good balance is between upgrading your Harrier or your Blackhawk or even the Abrams. And this is what I really like. They showed this Abrams and then they add some ERA armor on it, some of the Tusk armor, if I'm not mistaken, which is Tactical Urban Survival Kit, which just adds some ERA in different places to hopefully protect against heat projectiles. Something I missed, and I actually only noticed on my third or fourth rewatch of this footage, is this scene with the Apache. The Apache has just fired an anti-tank guided missile, and in the background you can actually see an anti-air systems icon. I believe that's a Tor. Now the thing is that this helicopter is actually going to change altitude to a lower one, and you'll see the missile that was aimed at it by that anti-air system actually impact on the roof of that apartment building. However, the Apache's missile, because of the angle and the way it was fired, actually finds its target, eliminates that anti-air system, and now the Apache has free reign to kill these Russian tanks and pop their turrets because the anti-air system's been disabled. Using these buildings for sort of makeshift cover, even for air units, is actually a very interesting possibility. And you can see the button that is pressed once the change altitude thing pops up with the, in this case, it looks like it's the L key, which most likely will just mean like something in Wargame where your helicopters can either fly high or you can try to hide them behind certain areas on the map. And in this case, a apartment building seems to be pretty good cover for your Apache. So what looks like some Russian light vehicles are actually getting artillery, perhaps it's more HIMARS, and one of the apartment buildings they're next to seems to be damaged to the point where it actually collapses. And it does throw some dust and debris around, which looks really good. And I'm wondering if there's any damage attached to being close to a destroyed building or a building that's in the progress or process of being destroyed. It doesn't look like it right off the bat, though it also doesn't seem like it just went from being fully there to being fully destroyed. And in the next shot, we actually see a burning apartment building with a whole bunch of smoke. It doesn't seem like it's partially destructible. It just seems like it's either destroyed or it's not destroyed. However, this particular destroyed building still would provide a lot of cover for vehicles or even keep them out of view for vehicles behind that. So it's interesting to see that a destroyed building will still have some sort of defensive effect for anyone hiding near it. All right, get a quick view of an Abrams, and I do want to take a look at this. We have the 50 caliber Browning, which is obviously the 50 caliber machine gun. We have the M240, which would be the medium machine gun, and then there are two different round types that the Abrams main gun can fire, which is different from Modern Conflict, where tanks just fired shells randomly, whatever they needed, whether it's HE at infantry or AP at tanks. But here it looks like we actually have limited ammo, and we have different types of ammo. Most likely some sort of armor piercing and more of an HE frag ammo, though I'm personally not an expert on American tank ammo, but it's interesting to see that we have limited ammo and we also have different types of ammo for tanks to be used in most likely different situations. Then we have this awesome angle of what I believe is a KA-52 doing an attack run. This is what I was talking about earlier on in the video about the voiceover of the Russian pilots sounding very panicked, and it does add a lot of immersiveness when your soldiers are actually yelling or screaming and not just being like, oh, target destroyed. They're actually yelling and screaming about what's going on in the battle in and around their vehicle. Then this shot of a T-80 BVM, though granted the picture is obviously most likely a placeholder, it actually has three types of main ammo. Again, most likely some sort of HE, frag, armor piercing shell. It also has what most likely are 6 anti-tank guided missiles. The Russian tanks are very well known for having ATGMs that actually come out of their barrel. So it's interesting they are going to be adding something like that here as well in Broken Arrow. I do want to touch on this quick shot of a T-14 Armata. I'm assuming a lot of comments will be about this specific tank, or there will be quite a few comments about this specific tank. I'm not sure how they're going to be balancing this thing because of the way that it has not seen combat yet. Now, it would be cool to see some more prototype units like the T-14 Armata or the T-15 APC, though I'm not sure to what degree they are going to have a place in Broken Arrow, though it would be cool to just have them as a very expensive, very limited unit. And I'm sure that the developers can give the American faction or any future factions some crazy prototypes. And I guess first the thing that comes to mind would be that Polish stealth tank tank. I think it's a PL-01 or PL-01. I'll have a picture of it on the screen here. And this thing just screams Command and Conquer to me, and just a very sort of far idea that I have, that if they do add new nations, and Poland will be one of them, it'd be cool to see some prototypes, even if they are very, very exclusive, very rare, and very expensive, as well as just seeing 1 or 2 per battle at the most. Some air combat between Russian and American planes reminds me a lot of just WARGAME, where it's more of sort of an RNG fest. And I wish there was a better way of dealing with aircraft. And I think personally, World in Conflict did a very interesting job of it, where the biggest thing you would directly control in the air would be helicopters, and any sort of jets, bombers, or strike aircraft would be sort of call-ins, which was a little bit more indirect, which I really liked, because having this weird air-to-air combat, it's just an RNG thing where you hope your missile hits and you hope there's misses due to like ECM or accuracy, skill of the pilots. So I'm not just a huge fan personally. I love seeing aircraft in these games because I know how much air power, of course, plays a role in modern conflicts, but I'm still just not 100% sold on aircraft being directly pilotable or controllable, because I just think World in Conflict did such an amazing, pretty balanced job at it. And then the final shot is really interesting. It shows a very large battle, both outside of a city and inside of a city, between the Russians and the Americans here from the Russian perspective, with BMPs, BTRs, tanks. We have Mi-24s engaging Abrams, LAVs, Bradleys, and other units into town, with friendly and enemy rocket artillery coming in. Now, this should give you an idea of the scale. And again, I'm hoping that the large cities on these maps aren't going to make it annoying. It's something, again, World in Conflict didn't have a lot of big city. The only map that I can think of would be the Seattle map, that they made the city big, but the larger parts you fought over didn't actually have that much building cover. Where it sees so far here, a lot of the gameplay footage they've shown has a lot of high-rise buildings, and I almost am afraid it might turn into a game of here where you're just going to be watching icons fight and shoot each other and blow up. Whereas I found World in Conflict so strong was you really had to focus, grounded on a lot less units, but I never felt like I was just seeing red icons shoot blue icons. And it's something I guess I have with WARGAME and Still Division, because you kind of lose that overview. But I'm afraid that with tall buildings, especially built up this close together, that may or may not really become a thing. So I'm hoping to see that we can maybe figure out a way for that to be less of an effect, or at the very least, if there is some sort of a replay system, you can always go into battles you've played after and then get some really nice shots, and it's not all focused on getting them right there and then. But that's obviously more from a creative perspective, from my own perspective, because in the end, I want to make an engaging video, and it's kind of hard when the only thing you see as a viewer is just blue and red icons shooting at each other until one of them disappears. Now, just a quick look at this Broken Arrow footage, and again, I have been part of their closed test. It's been super exciting to get my hands on a game that I've been really looking forward to, and with me I know many people. For now, that's all we have to look at for today. So again, thank you so much for your time and letting me talk about some Broken Arrow to you. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to check out more Broken Arrow, I have a link to their Steam store page, and as well as my playlist again down below in the description. Hope you enjoyed. Love to see you in the next one.